The question on this Facebook page, they said that the principal, and this was an anonymous post, the middle school principal at where the school nurse worked at, I don't know if it's male or female. The principal at this middle school told this school nurse's supervisor they didn't want this school nurse to return next school year. The school nurse anonymously said, "What do you suggest?" But here's the thing. I didn't like hearing this when I worked in K through 12. But the school is the kingdom, and that principal, they're either king or queen of the kingdom. And if a principal says they don't want you back to your upline person, I hope that you have a good relationship with that upline person where maybe they could help you to go to another location, maybe do a transfer, maybe frame it a certain way, okay? But I had a similar situation where there was a nurse and there was absolutely nothing wrong with her. She was very forthright, and this principal just didn't like her personality, which there was absolutely nothing wrong with it. But if something happened, she's like, well, we learned this during the orientation that this is supposed to happen, and this is supposed to happen, and this is supposed to happen. And she would be absolutely right. Or if I would send an email, she would ask me a question. Further clarification, are we doing this, this, and this? And I would say, you're absolutely right. Thank you for pointing that out. Let me do an updated email. So I guess the principal at this elementary school that I used to be a nurse consultant for didn't like it. So she came to me. And she said to me, this school nurse isn't working out. This school nurse isn't working out. So I was in a conundrum. I went to her and I asked the school nurse, how do you feel about this place? I don't know if you're going to be able to transfer somewhere else. You can try. She's like, I got a good husband. I'm like, okay. I said, honestly, I think you can go and get reassigned somewhere. So this is what she did. She resigned, and then she reapplied at another school and stayed there for a good while until she decided to retire. As this principal, when a principal says that they don't want a school nurse to come back, that's like a flare. They're sending out a flare. And the person said to me, yeah, it won't go well for you. And trust me, I know what it's like when somebody doesn't want you there. They'll do what they can to push you out. If you have kids and you're working at the same school as your kids, first of all, I wouldn't suggest you ever work at the same school as your kids, okay? Because the principal can leverage that against you. I've seen that happen at least 2 times. The first time, the child was on an IEP, and I said to her, I'm like, it just wasn't working out at the school. It was a very toxic school. And I was thinking in my head, I'm like, oh, I wish that she hadn't had her child over here too. But a lot of times young mothers, they will work at elementary school and have their children there, so that way they can drop them off, be at work, and then just they can go home together. It's not unusual in nursing. Hang on. So This school nurse ended up quitting, and then she ended up going to high school, and her child was able to go to a neighboring elementary school. She actually lived in that area, so then her child was able to get on an IEP over there and everything. But the principal actually said to her, it's a privilege for you to be over here. And trust me, that school left a lot to be desired. Okay. I wouldn't have wanted my kids over there. So this other situation, there's another school nurse. By the way, the school nurses there, well, I won't even get their school nurse, okay? I won't even get into whether they're RN or LPN, because that might be a little bit too much of identifying information. This other school, it was a middle school, and this principal was like a total terror. The principal was targeting all the different school teachers. The teachers got together and they did some stuff, and eventually the principal ended up on the news for targeting and bullying. The teachers united together and got rid of that principal. So this nurse, that principal turned towards the nurse and started targeting the nurse. Wonderful nurse. And she said, I can't take it anymore. Nurse Danielle, they would call me like Miss Sanford or Mrs. Sanford, or even though I'm widowed. And I said, well, you're a great nurse. You know what? You know you're going to be quitting anyway. Maybe just go and go to HR and throw a Hail Mary and say you can't take it and you're going to quit. So HR immediately put her in this school. I said, when you go there, you have to have a solution. So they put her in this high school, and she was doing great over there. And I said, you know, are you going to leave your son over here? Oh, well, he's doing great. He's a president and everything. I said, I don't think it's a good idea to leave your child over here. I just got a bad feeling. So she left the child over there, and the next thing you know, she was getting a call at the, she was at a high school, and she got called that her child had been jumped. So what is every mother going to do when you hear something's wrong with your child? She was called to the school. They called her. She went to the school and bypassed the sign-in sheet because nobody's thinking about, no one is thinking about a sign-in sheet when somebody calls and says that their child has been jumped. And somebody had already met her and walked her over. This is all on camera. How about the next thing you know, this principal is saying that she's trespassing and he's gonna get her arrested. She's gonna get fired. And when that happened, the nurse said that he had a big old smile on his face when it was happening. Okay? Now, keep in mind, Artie said all this stuff is going on with the school teachers that have gotten together. He's been on the news media, all kind of stuff. This is before he got fired. So, excuse me if my stomach growls. So I let Triad know. Oh, by the way, they send her home. They send the nurse home. So I called Triad, and I called the other person above Triad, the director, who I think that they were in cahoots to push me out. I think it is. They're in cahoots together. Work in cahoots. I think they're probably both retired by now. Anyway, so first I called the director, and I said, is somebody gonna support this person? We're looking into it. I I speak to Triad, alleged. And so Triad is implying that, well, if people get put on administrative leave, that normally means that they're going to get fired. This is what Dark Triad is saying to me. So I've spoken to this person, before this nurse got put on admin leave. We had spoken to one another, and I said, you need to, you didn't do anything wrong. So if it gets down to you need a witness, I'm going to definitely support you if you need anything. So anyway, they put the nurse on admin leave. And so it was like Dark Triad was making it this fear thing. Like if we tried to get in, your job could be in jeopardy and everything. So at some point, the nurse said, hey, I'm just letting you know I'm on admin leave. So she was getting protected by the whistleblower thing. So she was on paid leave. So at some point, she came off the paid leave and they assigned her to another school. They signed her to an elementary school, I think it was, or was it middle school? Anyway, she was assigned to another school, and then she just reached out to me because during that time, they're like, don't talk to anybody. So she's like, hey, Miss Sanford, hey, Nurse, I'm letting you know I'm off. I'm off of the paid leave, and I'm now assigned to a school. So they protected the nurse, put her in another school. The principal ended up getting fired. And so in all of this stuff, Dark Triad and the director that was above Dark Triad didn't offer this nurse any kind of support or anything. Alleged. That's my understanding based on conversations with this nurse. That's an example of when the nurse was protected, but most of the time that isn't so. And I only think the reason that happened is because all those teachers had gotten together and did a petition against this principal. Okay, so then they put the nurse. Everything was on camera, by the way, when this happened. They put the nurse on paid leave, and she's still working there. Nice person, and she does some other things that are, income streams away from the job too. Very strategic and very smart woman. So anyway, what I would say to that, so I've given you some examples of situations that I ran into when I was working at that job as a nurse consultant. So what I would probably say to that nurse is I would honestly say to look for another job. I just don't think it's gonna go well for that nurse. And when you are a nurse, you can find jobs other places. I mean, unless you do something completely egregious. You'll be able to find something to do.